Am I audible now? Yes, am I audible now? Okay, fine. I will start it again. Sorry for the. Okay, let's start it again. Approach to bleeding disorders. We will start it again. I hope now I am audible. A 9-year-old boy has developed prominent bruises on his extremities over the past week. On physical examination, he had ecchymosis petechiae on his arm and legs. On lab investigation, he had hemoglobin of 13.8, hematocrit of 14.9, MCV of 93, and platelet count of 11,300, and WBC of 77,000. He had a history of respiratory essential virus pneumonia 3 weeks ago. His condition improves after he had a corticosteroid therapy. So you have to tell what is the most likely abnormalities that is causing this hemorrhagic diastasis. First is whether there is any anti-platelets antibodies present, whether there is bone marrow aplasia, glycoprotein 2B or 3A dysfunction, vitamin C deficiency, last von Willebrand factor metalloprotease deficiency. Yes, can you, any one of you tell what is the most likely answer? Anyone? You can write down in the chat box. Okay, fine. No problem. We can discuss this question again after we are done with all the we are we studied all the approach for the bleeding disorder. Okay, starting with the causes of bleeding. First of all, it can be three main things. That is the vessel disorder, or the platelets, or the coagulation factor disorder. This and the combination of these three. Coming to the vascular disorder, it can be acquired, it can be congenital, right? So, acquired, it can be senile purpura, it can be vascular purpura, or Henoch-Stollen purpura. In the congenital, we have hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Lately, this is just the revision of what you had in the morning. So, just revise all your facts. It can be quantitative and qualitative. See, quantitative is the amount, and qualitative is uh, the function of the platelets, right? So, qualitative, it can be thrombocythemia and Bernard-Soulier syndrome, and as well as drugs. Quantitative, we have thrombocytopenia and thrombocythemia. Coming to the disorders of coagulation, it can be hereditary or acquired. Hereditary, it can be hemophilia A, B, von Willebrand disease, and disorders of fibrinogen. Now, disorders of fibrinogen, it can be the three things. It can be decrease or the absence or the dysfunctioning fibrinogen. Then the acquired, we have DIC, we have liver disease, vitamin K deficiency, mass transfusion of stored blood, acquired inhibitors of coagulation, heparin or oral anticoagulant therapy. Fine. Now we have to, so this is all the clinical approach when you are going to be intern or working as a physician. The things that have to be in your mind is how you clinically evaluate the patient. First of all, the very important thing is the history of the patient and how you see or examine or observe the clinical features. Then only you can think about what lab investigation you want to get done. They are first line and second line. Okay, starting with the clinical evaluation and the first the history. So history, you will ask what is the age of first manifestation? When does it start bleeding? And the family history, whether any relative of the patient had a similar history, spontaneous or after trauma. See, if there is a just a trauma and the patient bleeds to death, or it is after not death, whether the patient is bleeding, and then after trauma, that means that the patient had a trauma like 2 to 4 hours before, and now the patient is bleeding. Then time of manifestation after injury, that is ease with which the bleeding is controlled. And last but not the least, we will also ask about any history. This also includes whether the patient had any oral anticoagulants. Okay. Now, importance of history with this difference between we can have. So, in inherited disorders, there is a early age of presentation, whereas there is an acquired, it is later age presentation. Inherited, they have family history, that is not acquired. Then they are more severe inherited disorders, and bleeding is the dominant feature in the inherited disorders, and it is more likely having a single factor defect like hemophilia A and B. In acquired, they are less severe, and the clinical picture is dominated by underlying disorder. For example, in DIC, the main reason is something else. The patient might have some surgery, they might have some gynecological procedure, and after that, the patient landed up in DIC. Then it can be multiple, as I said, it can be multiple hemostatic defects. Okay, now before starting this, we should know how the bleeding lesions or the clinical examination, how they look. So petechiae, as you see in this picture, these are small, very small, 1 to 2 mm, less 1 to 2 mm. It is like 0.1, 0.2 centimeters, red or purple spot on the body. And in this picture, it is arm. Okay, and it is caused by minor hemorrhage, most likely the capillary blood vessels, right? So it is pinpoint hemorrhage that is less than 2 mm, that is 0.2 centimeters. Okay, coming to the next, this is ecchymosis. We see this is a medical term for subcutaneous hematoma that is larger than 1 centimeter. Okay, now in common language, we use the term bruise. Okay, it can be located both in the skin as well as in mucous membrane. Okay. The third term is hemarthrosis, a bleeding into the joint spaces. Can you see you can obviously difference, note the difference between the two legs of the patient, right? So there is a bleeding into the joint spaces, and it is mostly seen in hemophilia A and B, and it is rare in the disorders of vessels and platelets. Okay, so or in the acquired coagulation disorders. Okay, coming to the difference between as such in the disorders of platelets and the disorders of coagulation. First, we talk about the platelets. So in platelets, the petechiae are characteristics. The patients are statistically having small and multiple superficial ecchymosis. The patient, there is no deep dissecting hematomas, no arthrosis. Bleeding from the superficial cuts, it is persistent and often profuse, and the patient they usually don't have a family history except the von Willebrand disease. Then bleeding from the mucosal membrane is prominent in case of platelet disorder. Now coming to the coagulation disorder, petechiae are rare, echymoses are common, but they are usually large and solitary. Whereas in platelet, it was small and multiple. Okay. Then deep dissecting hematomas, it is characteristic in coagulation, and hemarthrosis is also characteristics in coagulation. And bleeding from the superficial cuts is minimal in coagulation, and bleeding may occur from the mucous membrane. Okay, you can just note this down. Otherwise, it is very difficult to just rectify this. Like easy bruising is more common in deficiency of factor 8, second 8 and 9. Hematomas are more common in same factors 2, 8 and 9. Then mucosal bleeding is 2, 8, 9 plus 11. Then hemarthrosis, it is 8, 9 and 10. Post-surgical bleeding, fibrinogen 8, factor 2, factor 5, factor 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13. Intracranial bleedings are more common with factor 7 deficiency, factor 8, factor 9, and factor 13. Delayed wound healing is most common in fibrinogen and factor 13 deficiency. Umbilical cord bleeding is common in factor 10 and factor 13. And these miscarriages are fibrinogen and factor 13 deficiency. Then thrombosis is most common in abnormal fibrinogen. So you understand that fibrinogen is important for the breakdown of fibrin. So if that is not occurring, there will be increased chances of thrombin formation. So the patient will present with thrombosis. Okay, and factor 12, free kallikrein and high M kininogen, they mostly asymptomatic. Okay, now this is one of the most important steps. So that is collection of sample. First of all, the syringe should be plastic or polypropylene. Then the venous blood is preferred, then the capillary blood. And preferably we don't use pressure cuff. Even if you use, it should be less than 1 minute. So and one more thing that we have to note is the blood sample should not be taken from the any indwelling line or catheter. So first, the thing we have to make sure that the anticoagulant is properly, thoroughly mixed in the tube, and we have to keep this sample on the crushed ice until it is delivered to the lab. Now, when you are intern, this is very important that uh, the ratio of anticoagulant in the blood has to be 1:9. Okay, the anticoagulant that is most commonly used is trisodium citrate. So 9 volume of blood is added to 1 volume of anticoagulant, right? So the tubes that are present in the hospital are these blue capped tubes. Okay, so you have to remember these blue tubes, and this will be in your practical as well as in your spotting. Also, you can have these tubes. So the most important thing about these tubes is that there is two lines. One is straight continuous line, and second is the dot. The continuous line denotes that minimum this amount of blood should be present in the test tube. Okay, if it is less than that, the ratio is deranged. Right. Similarly, the dotted one present tell you that this is the maximum amount of blood that should be in that tube. If it is more than that, again the ratio is deranged. So it is very important as an intern, as a doctor, as a physician to make sure that the sample, the blood you have collected should be in between that. Okay. If it is like slightly low, slightly above, it is done. But it shouldn't cross the both the lines, right? It shouldn't be above the dotted line. It should not be below the continuous line. So here the ratio is the 2.7 ml of blood sample is there, and 0.3 ml of anticoagulant, that is trisodium citrate, we have in this. So try to understand whenever we are doing this coagulation profile, the blood sample should be in this blue tube, not in heparin or this green tube or the purple tube. No, but that's not acceptable. Okay. Coming to the lab investigations, we have for coagulation factors, we have PT, APTT, TT, that is thrombin time, fibrinogen assay. And then for the platelets, we have platelet count and the bleeding time. Okay. So before starting with this, please remind yourself of this coagulation cascade. This is very, very important. Before going to the details of all these test, we have to know what all is in this box. If you remember this, you can sure which test is going to be positive, or sorry, which will going to be normal or abnormal. Now, this is the intrinsic pathway, this is the extrinsic pathway, and this is the common pathway of the population cascade. Right. So, intrinsic pathway, what all we have? See, we have factor 12, right? We have factor 11, we have factor 9 here, and we have factor 8. Okay, and also we have here thrombin, right? We have factor 2. So remember this, that these are all the factors that is present in intrinsic pathway. Now coming to the extrinsic pathway, what we have? We just have 7 over here. Okay. Now apart from this, you have to understand that this is the common pathway, and this any deficiency in this, that is factor 8, 5, 2, 30, right? So these will also be deranged. If it is deranged, the PT and PTA, PTT, they will also be deranged. So these are the common. In both the pathways, this end is the common. So any deficiency of these protein of these factors, coagulation factors, this will also lead to prolongation of the respective test. Okay, starting with the PT, that is prothrombin time. Okay, the significance, it reflects the overall activity of the extensive pathway, right? So we have seen that 7 was in that, right? And then from the common, we have factor 5 and factor 10. And it is lesser to factor 1 and 2. So what is the principle? You have to remember the principle. The principle is that platelet poor plasma plus tissue thromboplastin plus calcium in uh, so what will happen in presence of thromboplastin? There will be activation, and the extrinsic pathway is activated, and there will be clot formation. Okay, the normal range is 11 to 16 seconds. Okay, with rabbit thromboplastin, and with human thromboplastin, it is 10 to 12. Coming to the interpretation, what are the causes of prolonged PT? So, as we have said, the factors that are involved in the expensive pathway, right? So it is 7, 10, 5, 2, and 1. Lesser degree of 2 and 1. Vitamin K deficiency, liver diseases specifically, especially we have this obstructive jaundice, oral anticoagulant, and DIC. Next we have APTT. Here it reflects the efficacy of intrinsic pathway. It is sensitive to change of factor 8, 9, 11, and 12, right? And it is also sensitive to heparin and circulating anticoagulants. So the principle is that the test measures the clotting time of the plasma after activation of the contact factors, that is kaolin, silica, and ellagic acid, and the addition of the phospholipid and calcium chloride, but without the added tissue thromboplastin, because tissue thromboplastin, this is in the extrinsic pathway, not in the intrinsic pathway. So it indicates the overall efficacy of the intrinsic pathway. The normal range is 26 to 40 seconds. Please, I'm just telling you that these are the questions that are going to be asked in your practical vivas, right? So make sure you know the significance. Even this slide is enough. These 3 points, that is, first is significance. If you know the principle, the normal range, and the interpretation, that is you are needed to ratify. It's, okay. Now, what is the causes of prolonged EPD? So, deficiency of factor 8, deficiency of factor 9, DIC, heparin therapy, circulating anticoagulants, liver disease, massive transfusion of plasma, depleted stored blood. Okay, so now you have to remember that hemophilia is can be detected by prolonged ATP. Now coming to the next, thrombin time. So the significance, if it exists the last step of coagulation, that is conversion of fibrinogen to fibrin in presence of thrombin. Okay, so it bypasses both the pathways. The principle is that thrombin is added to the plasma and the clotting time is measured. The thrombin time is affected by the concentration and reaction of fibrinogen and by the presence of inhibitor substances, including fibrinogen or FDP, that is fibrin degradation products, and heparin. So the normal range of the patient, it should be the 2 seconds of the control, that is 15 to 19 seconds. Time of 20 seconds and longer. Okay, if you didn't got it, I will repeat this. That the range, it should be within 2 seconds of the control, right? It's like 15, 16. Um, but if it is like 22 to 20, it is 10 times, right? So times, if it is 20 seconds or longer, it is definitely abnormal. Now, what are the causes? As we have told, it is uh, uh, it is assessing the conversion of fibrinogen to fibrin. So if it is deficiency or disorder of fibrinogen, it can be detected by this. Second thing, it can also be prolonged in presence of FDP, DIC or liver disease, or if the patient is on unfractioned heparin therapy. If the patient is having hypoalbuminemia or paraproteinemia, then also the patient will have prolonged TT. Coming to the fibrinogen assay, the principle here is diluted plasma is clotted with strong thrombin solution. The plasma must be diluted to give a low level of any inhibitors. A strong thrombin solution must be used so that the clotting time over a wide range is independent of the thrombin concentration. Normal range is 1.8 to 3.6 gram per liter. Interpretation, it is sensitive to inherited dysfibrinogenemia. It is insensitive to heparin unless the level is very high, and high level of FBP may also interfere with the result. Now, coming to the platelet count and bleeding time, platelet count must be done in any suspected bleeding disorder, and peripheral blood smear should be examined for the size and staining properties of the platelets. Now, coming to the bleeding time, the significance is that it assists the primary hemostatic defect, that is, the blood vessels and the platelet, depending on adequate functioning of the platelet and the blood vessels. So, there are two methods of IVs and templates. So, accordingly, they have the range. In IVs method, it is 2 to 7 minutes, and in templates method, it is 2.5 to 9.5 minutes. So, what are the causes of bleeding time? Prolonged bleeding time. It can be thrombocytopenia. It can be VWD, that is von Willebrand disease, platelet function disorders, and disorder of blood vessels. Because it's specifically said it is for the integrity or the functioning of the platelets as well as the blood vessels. Okay. Now coming to the blood vessel wall disorder, what we can do. Now the problem is that TTC and this is platelets and prothrombin time, APTT, TTT, they all are normal. So the only thing that is going to help us is the BP, that is bleeding time. So now the bleeding time that can also be normal or increased. So we have this test called as Hess capillary fragility test. So the and what happens in this is that we take a cup that and this BP cup and we wrap in the patient's upper arm. Okay, and the patient the pressure that is maintained is between the systolic and diastolic BP of the patient for 15 minutes. Okay, and just below the elbow joint, we make a 4 to 5 centimeter. Some books say 4 centimeter, some say 5. So we make a circle or just below the 4 centimeter, we make a circle of 2.5 centimeter, and the anterior aspect of the forearm. Okay, and so we will note that there are some petechiae or some hemorrhagic spots are being noted. So up to 10, it is normal, and if it is the patient is having more than 15 to 20, so it is always pathological, and it just represents that the patient is having increased capillary fragility or ITT, that is. Okay. Now coming to thrombocytopenia per se. So what is thrombocytopenia? Thrombocytopenia is defined as the reduction in the peripheral blood platelet count below the normal lower limit, that is uh, 1,50,000. But in some books it is 1 lakh. Mainly we take it in account after it is decreased below 1 lakh. There is no absolute relation between platelet count or occurrence or rate of bleeding. Bleeding is common when the count is less than 30,000 per liter, and if it is less than 10,000, the bleeding is usual and often more severe. Thrombocytopenia is accompanied by positive tonic test and prolonged bleeding. Okay, now you have to, rather going into much detail, I'm just showing you this one picture. So what you have to understand in this is this is we are seeing first of all in a peripheral smear, right? So there is thrombocytopenia. You got the report of the patient that the in CBC value the platelet count is, for example, if it is like 50,000. So what you do is you examine the peripheral smear. So once you examine the peripheral smear, you will check whether there is any abnormal platelet clubbing is there or any satellitis. Okay, because it can occur because of EDTA also. Okay, so whether it is pseudo clumping or it is artifactual thrombocytopenia, this can occur. So you have to rule out this. Okay, if it is not that, the platelets are actually factually decreased, so the patient is having true thrombocytopenia. Okay, fine. What you are going to do next is you will see whether the platelets that are present in the smear are this regular in size or whether they are increased or big in size, right? So if they are, you will think of hereditary thrombocytopenia. you are going to examine other cells also, right? So you are going to see the RBC, whether there are any type of cystocytes, that is clinical cells present or not. If there are, you can think of PPP, HUS, and DIC. Okay, so what are the further tests that you can tell? Get it done. That is LDH. You can get bilirubin done, haptoglobin, PP, APTP, D-dimer, and fibrinogen. Then, if you are seeing any kind of blast in the peripheral itself, nucleated cells or Pelger-Huth cells, dacrocytes, etc., then you are maybe dealing with any leukemias or any primary, that is bone marrow disorders. So what you will do next step will be that you will ask for bone marrow aspirate or biopsy. Okay. Now coming to the, if you are still seeing microsphere, that is small spherocytes and RBC clumping or agglutination, then you have to think of Evans syndrome, in which we have thrombocytopenia as well as hemolytic anemia, right? So for that, you will get direct agglutinin test and reticulocytes done, LDH and bilirubin. Bilirubin, as if it is hemolysis is also taking place, then this will help you in both the cases, right? So it will help you to know whether the patient is having hemolysis or not. Okay, coming to the next type, that is lymphocytosis, atypical lymphocytes, any neutrophilia is there, toxic granulation, etc. Then you have to think of if there is anything like lymphocytosis is seen in the viral disease, neutrophilia in bacterial disease, sepsis, toxic granulation in neutrophils are seen when the patient is in sepsis, right? So that's why you will go and think, okay, this can be infection, and you get the other markers done, that is of infection or inflammation, that is chest X-ray, CRP, ESR. We will get the virology done whether the patient is having any kind of viral infection, and if you are thinking of sepsis, blood culture. Okay. Now, last is it is nothing such is present. It is just the thrombocytopenia. What else you can think? You can think of ITP. If it is drug-induced ITP, can be there. Then thrombocytopenia, sorry. It can be HIV, HCV, H. pylori, heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, DIC, etc. So this will all be based on your clinical assessment. Okay. Now coming to the very main topic is ITP, that is immune thrombocytopenia purpura. This you can have as a question in your semester or in your prof or pre-prof, and this can be this is majorly going to be in your written exam. Okay. What are the types? First is it is primary, it can be secondary. If there is no reason behind it, it is idiopathic, that is primary. If you know there is some reason, the patient has some history, then it becomes the secondary. Okay. Now the classification, we also classify them according to the presentation and also whether it is acute or whether it is chronic. Okay. Now the pathogenesis, what happens is the patient are they just have a history of infection or something. So after that, the plasma cells infuse or form the antibodies against the platelets. So what happens? These are the platelets, right? So the antibodies that are formed by the plasma cells, they attack on platelets, and these platelets are taken by the macrophages, and these macrophages will further go to where, that is spleen. So these patients are classically, they will come with spleen again. What is the clinical feature of these patients? They have hemorrhagic manifestation of ITP, are classically purpuric type. Okay, chymosis or purpuric. So the severity of bleeding depends upon the platelet count, and the patient usually present with cutaneous purpura, petechiae. It can be anything except the hemarthrosis. Okay, what is the pathophysiology? That's as I have already explained, that small item, that is caused by the platelet-specific antibodies. Okay, that bind to the patient's own platelets that are then rapidly cleared from the circulation by the mononuclear phagocytic system via macrophage Fc receptor. Okay, now these autoantibodies are classically formed against the platelet glycoprotein 2B and 3A or and whatever glycoprotein 1B9. So these are the two proteins or receptors, glycoproteins, sorry, against which these are antibodies are found, right? So there will be spinning sequestration. I have already told you before that these macrophages which ingest this complex, right, they will go to the spleen. So there will be spleen sequestration, accounts for the shortage of survival of platelets in most patients, but the liver and the RE cells of the bone marrow can play a major. Okay, now you have to understand that the platelets that have gone to the spleen. So in total, what is happening is the whole there is complexes forming and everything is going to the spleen. So in total, the blood circulation is not having platelets. So there is thrombocytopenia there, right? Okay. Now coming to what is acute and what is chronic IBD. So acute classically seen in children, right, and chronic is in adults. So mainly, there is no exploration in case of acute. In case of chronic ITP, we have 3:1. That is, it is 3 times more common in females than males. Then in acute, we usually have 1 to 3 weeks history of any infection by viral or bacterial. And onset of bleeding is abrupt in case of acute cases, and it is insidious in chronic ITP. Now, the next thing you have to note is hemorrhagic bullae in mouth that is present usually in case of acute ITP, not in chronic ITP, and the blood count falls below 20,000. So, just remind you, the patient will be having platelet count less than 20,000. The patient will be a child, right? Not an adult. Then eosinophilia and lymphocytosis is more common in case of acute ITP because the patient just had infection. So duration is 2 to 6 weeks. If it is more than that, it is prolonged like till 6 months. It is then chronic ITP. Spontaneous remission occurs in case of acute, that is in children, not in adults, that is chronic ITP. Okay. On examination, the anemia is proportionate to the blood loss the patient is having. So, because of the thrombocytopenia, the patient is bleeding, and because the patient is bleeding, the patient is having anemia. So, the anemia is proportionate, nothing else. The blood loss because of the platelet loss. Okay. Then the patient is having purpuric rashes, splenomegaly. What all lab investigation? First of all, hemoglobin percentage can be reduced. So on CBC, WBC count can be normal and increased depending upon whether the patient is having any concomitant infection, right? So then on blood film, what do we see? We see an normocytic normochromic 2 microcytic hyperchromic or microcytic RBCs. Platelets are morphologically abnormal. They are large, small, and some atypical forms. Bleeding time is classically raised in this. On bone marrow examination, what you find is megakaryocytes and their precursors are present in normal or increased number. Okay, and they will be left shift to left. That is more of precursors of megakaryocytes present as compared to the mature megakaryocytes. Okay, and sometimes if there is loss of blood, more loss of blood, they can lead to steroid hyperplasia. Okay, what is the treatment? The treatment is that initially you give steroid to patient, right? And then you can give IV antibodies and anti-Rhd also if the patient is Rh positive. In the refractive case in which you have already tried all these three and the patient is not responding, you give this. You can do the thing is splenectomy because spleen is already enlarging because of so much of this platelet and antibody and macrophage. So it's hyperfunctioning. So there is spleen enlarged. So the last point is that for refractive patient, you do splenectomy. Rituximab, you can do that is anti-CD20, that is B cells again. So it will kill the B cells or so they will stop its functions of the B cells and so the antibodies for the antibodies are not formed. So others are azathioprine and cyclophosphamide. And we can also give thrombopoiesis stimulant that is going to increase the platelet formation, right? Okay. Now coming back to the first question we had. Okay, this one. So coming back to this, yes. Now tell me, from all these details, all these tests, what you come to the diagnosis for this question. So what you have to see is there is a 9-year-old boy, that is a child, right? Second thing is he developed prominent bruises, right, on the extremities, past feet. On examination, he is having petechiasis and chymosis. Okay. Now, lab investigation, what you have to know this, hemoglobin is normal, hematocrit is okay, MCV is also okay. Platelet count, yes, platelet count is 11,300. It is markedly reduced, right? It is markedly reduced. WBC 7,700, it is all okay. Now, the patient is having a history of viral pneumonia 3 weeks ago. Okay, and this is the first point was the platelets are less than 11,000. Second point to be noted is the viral history of viral pneumonia. And the third point is that the patient improves with corticosteroid therapy. Yes, now tell me what is the most likely answer? What is going to be improved on corticosteroid therapy? Yes, anyone? It's 242 students. Okay, starting with E option, type 1 millibrand factor metalloprotease deficiency. Can it be that? Yes, anyone? Am I audible or not? Okay, the answer is antiplatelet antibodies, right? This is a classical case of acute ITP, that is immune thrombocytopenia, right? The patient is a child, that is, he is just 9-year-old child, right? Second clue was the platelet is 11,000, as we have all yes just discussed. The platelets are classically less than 20,000. Yes. Then we had discussed that the patient are usually have a history of viral infection. So this is it. Viral pneumonia. The patient has 3 weeks of it. Third thing was he improves on corticosteroid therapy, that we have read that the patient with ITP are given corticosteroid therapy. So this is it. The answer is A, that is antiplatelet antibody. Okay. Uh, Is there any question you want to ask? Any question? Okay, fine. Thank you for all your patience. You can go and join your respective two batches. Thank you so much.